Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Pokemon video. This is going to be my top 15 Pokemon video. I thought with the announcement of Generation 8, Pokemon's Shield and Sword, that I would go back to a video I did ages ago, but actually extend it out and do my top 15 Pokemon video. I think I did the top 7 back when we only had, I think, 5 generations of Pokemon, so we have 7 generations now, and I'm doing my top 15. So first of all, some notes before we get into my picks. The choices here are a mix of me liking the design, the stats, abilities, and moveset of the Pokemon. So it is, for the most part, and basically all of them, a combination of all of those aspects that, I do need to like the design in a lot of cases, but I will give some leeway if the design isn't that great, if the Pokemon statistically or in some of the unique aspects of it is actually really interesting. But I'll explain those as I go through my list. With legendaries, I don't tend to use legendaries that much in the game, competitively, and stuff like that. I catch them, and that's about my involvement with legendaries. So I sort of tend to treat legendary Pokemon separately, in that, like, I'd probably be like, oh, these are my favorite legendary Pokemon, rather than mingling them in with everything else. Like, I like a good amount of the legendary Pokemon designs, but because I sort of treat them so separately, I think the spirit of this list more includes the Pokemon that aren't legendaries. So that's just me. I don't tend to use them on my team when I catch them. I'll maybe include like one every so often on a competitive team if I feel like I need that sort of power level to make up for some of the kind of edge case choices I usually pick on my teams. And then outside of one key exception, I only consider fully evolved Pokemon for the list. And that's just because in terms of competitive battling, for the most part, you don't really use Pokemon that aren't fully evolved. So that's why I'm focusing on the ones that you actually use to battle for most of the game. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's jump into the list. So starting off the list at number 15 is Galvantula. Obviously number Pokemon 596. It's the Elespiter Pokemon. And obviously because I'm talking a lot about kind of competitive, how good they are in game, as well as just the looks of the Pokemon, abilities here are Compound Eyes, Unnerve, or Swarm. Base stats, as you can see there, not actually all that amazing. It's under 500 overall base stats, but it's the unique typing of this guy, in addition to, I suppose, the synergy with at least one of its abilities that I think makes this guy very interesting for me. I like the Pokemon because it was one of the Pokemon I used on my Black and White and Black and White 2 teams. In part because of that unique typing, the Bug Electric, and also the fact that it is like an attacker, as you can see there, special attack and speed are its best stats, and if you lean towards those in like IVs and as well as EVs and even the nature, it can actually be a really, really good kind of fast attacker. Compound Eyes is probably its best ability because Compound Eyes increases the accuracy of moves. So it can learn Thunder, and because it's a special attacker, Thunder is very good. Thunder, I think, usually has a 70% accuracy. Compound Eyes boosts that up to like 91%. So Thunder, obviously, you would prefer, if possible, to use that over Thunderbolt because of the increased power, but you don't do it for the accuracy. This guy can run it fairly comfortably without needing to, switch to Thunderbolt. And then the fact that it's also a Spider-type Pokemon, it gets, Electro Web, that kind of electric bug move, which is kind of its signature, plus the Bug-type moves like that. What's it called? Sticky Web, which is like the field effect move that lowers stats kind of lowers speed down by 1 stage upon going in. So that's actually pretty good on like a quick Pokemon as well. So while statistically it's not the highest, I think it's a pretty solid unique type Pokemon. I think it fits some of the kind of categories I talked about at the start of the video. Unnerve, I think, just is something to do with, like, it stops your opponents from being able to eat berries. And then Swarm is like a bug version of like the starter abilities, which is like bug type moves are increased when the health is a bit lower. But still, yeah, I this guy primarily for just the use on the 2 teams and 2 of the games that I played, and then occasionally I'll bring this guy into a competitive battle every so often as well. So that's my number 15 on the list. Number 14 on the list is Lycanroc, specifically the Midday form. This is Pokemon number 745. It's the Wolf Pokemon. It's got 3 abilities, as you can see there: Keen Eye, Sound Rush, and Steadfast. Base stats are fairly interesting on this guy in that he's got pretty good normal physical attack as well as good speed, which the speed especially is interesting on a rock type Pokemon, and I think that's a large part of why I actually like this guy and why I used him on my Sun and Moon team, was because there was a certain unique aspect of just having a very fast rock type Pokemon. And also it has a sort of signature move in Accelerock, which is a priority move for rock type Pokemon, and it goes kind of first. So there was some of those fun, unique things that I like in kind of Pokemon that I think fit this guy. I actually really like the design as like a kind of more sleek rock type Pokemon, and there's some cool stuff about like the fact that it has the 3 different forms. I tend to just prefer the standard one over the other ones. I think the Dusk form is actually pretty good as well. But the Midday form is the one I went with, and I think I overall do like it the best in terms of the stat spread as well. They all have slightly different stats, but I like this guy as being, I think, the fastest of them, while still having good normal attack. So I don't have too much to say about this guy, but just unique rock type Pokemon. It doesn't just do the standard rock type thing, so that's why I like this guy a lot. The abilities are interesting in that, like, Keen Eye is just like, okay, stops accuracy drops. Sand Rush is obviously good if you use him in a sandstorm, and I think it like doubles attack in the sandstorm. And then Steadfast is let me actually I looked this up before. What does it do again? Raises speed each time the Pokemon flinches, so that's very that'll rarely come up for the most part. So it's solid, but it's obviously towards the bottom of my list for a reason. So, number 13 is Alolan Raichu. This is Pokemon number 26, the mouse Pokemon. It's obviously the Alolan form of normal Raichu. And yeah, it's got one ability, Surge Surfer, which all that does is that it doubles speed on electric terrain, which means you sort of have to use him on a team with one of those other electric types that can use the electric terrain move to give it that field. Base stats are pretty good. As you can see here, of course, special attack and speed are the highlights here again. But I think the most unique thing about this guy is, of course, the typing. So electric psychic typing, pretty cool there. Just the 2 kind of big, powerful kind of types. And then just obviously with his moveset, just like Thunderbolt plus Psychic on this guy is really, really, really good, with obviously the same type attack bonus, and then especially if you lean into EVs and IVs into special attack and speed, he's a really good kind of sweeper. I used this on my team in Sun and Moon and also Let's Go Eevee, so that tells you that it is a Pokemon I really like. And I think the design is just so much more interesting than normal Raichu. Just the simplicity of making the tail a bit more unique. Whereas, like, obviously Pikachu has a very unique tail. I felt like the tail in Raichu just kind of isn't all that great. But then making it like the surfboard type thing, and him psychically kind of hovering, but also still maintaining the electric typing. I think this is one of the coolest Alolan types that we have for sure. So, definitely an interesting Pokemon for sure, and the fact that it's an electric type, you can always put like paralyzing moves like Discharge and Thunder Wave on it. That's also good use for it, like competitively as well, to do some stat stuff and status effects, in addition to just being a good fast attacker. Number 12 on my list is Torterra. This is Pokemon number 389. It's the Continent Pokemon. Abilities are either Overgrow or Shell Armor, and really good base stats. Of course, most of the starter Pokemons have very good base stat totals, because it's meant to be a solid Pokemon that you can use throughout the entire game. But Torterra specifically is somewhat unique, I think, among the starter Pokemon, in that like it's a relatively defensive Pokemon. It doesn't have like amazing speed, but it hits hard and can kind of stay in the battle for a good amount of time. This was the Generation 4 starter that I chose, so I used this guy for, I think, Diamond and Platinum. I chose him both times for this. Now, a large part of that is because it's the Line Turtle Pokemon, and I'm such a big Avatar fan, of course, so how could I not choose this guy? And I just like the design in general. It is the standard, continent turtle, but it fits the Pokemon design aesthetic really, really well, and it feels different than like Venusaur of like the grass Pokemon on 4 legs with a like a kind of plant or tree on its back. It feels different, but I've always liked it. It's a grass ground type, which is pretty good. So just the simplicity of maybe 2 of the moves are going to be maybe more status or kind of stat boosting or stat decreasing for your opponent, and then it can have Wood Hammer is like a really good physical grass move that it can have, and an Earthquake to get make use of the ground type and attacking. I don't think it's overly used competitively, but it's always been a Pokemon I've really, really liked. Shell Armor as the unique ability here, that's not just the standard one. It stops the Pokemon from being able to receive critical hits, so that helps it in terms of it being more of a kind of tank defensive Pokemon. But again, the fact that it has Wood Hammer, which I think after same type attack bonus is like a 180 base power move, is really, really good. Number 11 on my list is Azumarill, who's Pokemon number 184. It's the Aqua Rabbit Pokemon. 3 pretty cool abilities actually: Thick Fat, Huge Power, and Sap Sipper. And this is definitely a Pokemon that, because of its somewhat low base stats, you need to use those abilities very well to sort of make up for that. So you can see here the base stats. It's relatively low across the board. It's got good HP, good defense, special defense. On the outside, it seems to just be a relatively defensive Pokemon. But then you realize that one of its abilities is Huge Power. And what Huge Power does is it just doubles the attack of Pokemon. It just flat out increases it by a multiplier of 2. So with Huge Power, its stats become like 100, which makes it actually very, very good. And oftentimes you will see this guy used as a very heavy physical attacker. Thick Fat is good for getting rid of the defenses, of course. And then Sap Sipper, another kind of defensive ability. It kind of basically means grass moves don't do anything to it, and then if you get hit with a grass type move, it increases its attack up. But I don't think you'd really run Thick Fat or Sap Sipper just because you want the Huge Power increase to do what you want to do with this with Azumarill. It's Water Fairy type, which is quite interesting. They changed it from Water Normal when they introduced the Fairy type, which I think is very, very cool because it already had access to some really good water moves like Aqua Jet for priority. What's it called? Aqua Tail as another good physical water move. And then Play Rough is, I think, its physical fairy move that it has to do good damage with. But it also has access to Belly Drum, so you can do that to further increase the attack and turn this thing into a real kind of menace. So I think for the sort of the Pikachu type Pokemon for Generation 2, I love how kind of far down the increasing attack road you can go with it. So very, very cool. And I think you can also use some Z crystals with this in terms of held items if you really wanted to, or just go for the Choice Band to further increase the attack. I haven't really talked about held items all that much so far, but we'll get into that as we go forward. Number 10 on my list is Aegislash, who is Pokemon number 691. This is the Royal Sword Pokemon. It has one ability because it has to only have one ability because of how it works. Its ability is Stance Change, and as you can see, it does have 2 forms. It's got Sword form and Shield form. It starts off in Shield form, and then as you use attacking moves, it switches into its Sword form. And then you use the special move that it has called King Shield to switch it back into its Shield form. And of course, what that means is that it has the unique sort of stat going up and down aspect of in Shield form. It goes from having 50 on the 2 attacks and 150 in the defenses, and then when it switches, it's got 150 on its attacks and 50 on its defenses. So it's actually a very powerful Pokemon, but you have to use it very carefully of like choosing when to be in what form or the other, because if you're sort of caught out in terms of having it in Sword form and it takes a hit, then it definitely is a bit of trouble. Now, thankfully, King Shield is a priority move, so if you use that, it does kind of immediately protect itself. But it's a very unique Pokemon. I think there's not many ones like this one, and that's why I like it so much. I remember using this on my X and Y team, and it took a bit of getting used to, but it was such a fun Pokemon to use because Ghost Steel typing, very, very unique, and it definitely it definitely was fun to use, to have to sort of almost like nearly every battle kind of really get around how in my head how to use it effectively. And then the fact it's a sword Pokemon, I think that's really cool. I'm not someone who has much of a problem with having Pokemon based on like things. So the Shield and Sword Pokemon, and especially with Pokemon Shield and Sword being the new games that are coming out, it's fun to see if this guy's going to have any sort of focus in the new games because of, I suppose, just the name and look similarity. Number 9 on my list is Scizor, who is Pokemon number 212. It's the Pinsir Pokemon. Abilities are Swarm, Technician, and Light Metal. It has a Mega Evolution into Mega Scizor, and its ability is then locked into Technician, which is good because realistically Technician is the ability you want to use even if you just use normal Scizor. Light Metal is a very weird ability. I don't know if any Pokemon makes good use of that necessarily. It just like affects the weight of the Pokemon and the couple of moves that deal damage based on weight, like low kick and stuff like that. So it's really not all that effective. Swarm is good, but with Scizor you emphasize the steel aspect of its typing more than the bug typing. So that's why Technician is good. What Technician does is it boosts the power of moves that have a base power of, I think it's 60 or less, by 50%. So the main thing with Scizor is obviously the kind of bullet punch focus. You do like Swords Dance, bullet punch, and then especially if you're Mega Scizor, you have the Technician boost in there as well. And suddenly you're doing a lot of damage because Scizor has very good stats. So it's good defensively as well. You can see 100 on standard defense and 80 on special defense. But it's got 130 on attack and 150 when it's in its Mega form. And that doing a steel type, priority move and bullet punch, that's doing a lot of damage. And then it also has access to some stuff like kind of X-Scissor, U-turn if you really want to get it out of there, depending on what way you go about it. Because obviously if you choose not to go down the Mega route, you open yourself up to be able to use an item with him. So you could use like a Choice Scarf or a Choice Band to do more attacking just as a normal Scizor. So it's a very cool Pokemon that like you can choose to go down the tank road with this or just go all in on the attack. So I really do like that aspect of it. And then visually I think standard Scizor is one of the coolest looking Pokemon out there. I think it gets a little goofy in the Mega form. I still like it ultimately because it's the Pinsir Pokemon and it just gets these crazy pincers and it looks more powerful, but the sleek look of the original Scizor, I think it's just it's hard to beat that, but I don't have too much of a problem with the Mega form. So yeah, very cool Pokemon. I've always liked Scizor. I just have I prefer some other kind of bug steel Pokemon, but we'll get to them. Number 8 on my list is Shuckle. This is probably a bit of a surprise to people who like Shuckle as a Pokemon. It's number 213. It's the Mold Pokemon. It's got 3 abilities, Sturdy, Gluttony, and Contrary. Base stats, as well as the typing a little bit. Bug Rock is a pretty interesting type combination. But the stats is definitely where this Pokemon really stands out as being completely unique compared to basically anything else. You look across 20 HP. What are we doing here? 10 attack. Oh, what's that? 230 defense. 10 special attack. 230 special defense as well. And only 5 speed. So it's one of the most extreme stat lineups of a Pokemon that we have, of just obscene defenses on both sides. Weak health though. It's obviously not going to be an attacker of any sort. So you'd lean, of course, towards the EVs and IVs, increasing its HP primarily, and then putting the rest of what you can into its defenses as well, to kind of maximize that. Sturdy is a very good defensive ability that goes along with it. It does have some weaknesses because of its typing, so theoretically it could get KO'd in one move, depending on what actually hits it, because its health isn't all that high despite the super high defenses. Gluttony is an interesting ability in that I suppose there's some use for it with specific berries, in that the way that ability works is that some berries only activate when your health is 25% or lower. Gluttony makes it so that the berry is activated at 50% or lower, which is, I suppose, gives it a bit more use for Shuckle. Contrary is very, very interesting. This what this does is it like reverses stat changes, in that like if you drop something by 6, it by plus, if you what am I talking about here? If you lower something by like -4 based on a move, it actually increases it that much. The best use with Shuckle, I think, is it has access to Shell Smash, which usually I think what that does is it lowers attack, it lowers defense, both defenses I think, by like 2 stages, and then increases attack by a certain amount. So with Shuckle, the effect that actually has is it does the reverse. So it kind of increases defense, lowers attack, which is exactly what you want. So it makes him even more defensive. And then like with moves, what you're really trying to do with him is kind of stall games out. You're hitting stuff with Toxic. You're using the move Encore to lock them into a certain type of move so you can keep taking hits. That sort of thing. Maybe Knock Off you include in there. I think Shuckle has access to Knock Off, to knock items off. It's very interesting. I actually won a competitive game once by like, I completely was losing this game. All other 5 of my Pokemon were taken out, and I think I'd only managed to take out one of my opponents. And I somehow managed to win with just Shuckle in the end by just Toxic stalling, using Encore effectively, and stuff like that. It was pretty crazy. I think I used Leftovers as the held item, if I remember correctly, but very cool Pokemon. I think it's a Pokemon that tends to always get forgotten because it doesn't look like anything impressive. And it only becomes impressive if you actually look at those base stats. I know a lot of people don't really look at the stats, but it's super interesting to see when certain Pokemon do have extremes like this. And now that makes Shuckle so interesting all of a sudden. Number 7 on my list is Vanilluxe, who is Pokemon number 584. It's the Snowstorm Pokemon. Ice type, obviously. And its abilities are Ice Body, Snow Warning, and Weak Armor. So Ice Body is the move that works when there is hail. Snow Warning is probably its best ability, and that actually is a move that activates hail when you kind of bring it into battle, and that's probably the best use for it ultimately. Weak Armor, I think what that does is that when you take a hit, your defense drops, but your speed increases, which is somewhat usable, but I don't think it's bulky enough to really justify doing that. Though, as you can see from the base stats, it's got more defense than you'd think. A lot of ice Pokemon suffer from maybe having low defense, apart from like 1 or 2 extreme examples. But you can see here, its stats are actually fairly solid across the board, like 71, 95 standard attack, 85 defense, 110 special attack is its main one, 95 defense, 79. So it's very solid across the board. I know a lot of people don't like the design because it's like it's an ice cream cone, but I think it's a really fun design, and I've never really had a problem with Pokemon being based off this sort of stuff. I think there's a lot of creativity in this design, with just the cone aspect, the cone part being like pure ice, and then the actual Pokemon itself kind of being almost like the snow or the ice cream within the cone, and then it having the the bit kind of stuck in there where like the kind of mist is coming out. I think it's such a fun Pokemon, and that's why I can never bring myself to hate this thing. The best use for this is I think ability Snow Warning, and then you put Blizzard on this, because Blizzard usually you don't use because it has low accuracy, but in Hail I think Blizzard hits, it has like it's the accuracy check doesn't happen, Blizzard just hits in Hail, so that makes it really strong. It also has that newish move, Freeze Dry, which is an ice move that's actually super effective against water types, and stuff like that. It's got Sheer Cold as well, the one-hit KO ice move. So there's some fun stuff. It's very ice focused. There's not a lot else you can do with it, but especially when I used this on my team in Generation 5, it was just my go-to ice thing. This need to take out a dragon, Vanilluxe, because it can take a hit and it can really deal out damage as well. So I think there's a lot of actually uses for this guy. I don't think it's amazing competitively or anything like that, but I think it's fun to use, and I'll always like a Pokemon that's a good cone. So yeah, Mega Vanilluxe, please. I want to see what they do. How do they improve on this? Number 6 on my list is Lantern. Number 171, it's the light Pokemon. Water electric type immediately, so that's a very unique type matchup, the kind of opposites in one Pokemon. The design is very, very simple, but I think it works completely as like the kind of anglerfish type Pokemon almost, with the light, it being electric, and then it's in the water, so it's a water type. Really, really fits. Abilities are Volt Absorb, Illuminate, and Water Absorb. Illuminate doesn't do anything in battle. Volt Absorb and Water Absorb are basically the same ability, but one's for electricity, one's for water. It's the one where basically the Pokemon is immune to either electricity for Volt Absorb or water for Water Absorb, and if they are hit by a move of that type, they regain health. So, stat-wise, it's not actually all that great. It's kind of in the mid, kind of borderline low 400s, but good HP. Average attack, average normal defense. Actually, kind of average. Fairly just slightly above average, usable, I suppose. Special attack and special defense, and then not great speed. So it doesn't seem all that great on the outside. But what I like about it is that the combination of ability, typing, and then some of the moves that it has access to, I think it's a very usable Pokemon. I like to use Lantern when I can. It sort of surprises people in a way. Like, immediately it has access to Thunder Wave and Confuse Ray, so you can do the whole Power Fusion thing if you want to. Leftovers is fairly good on this as a bulky Pokemon, and also that newish item Assault Vest is very good on this guy because he can be an okay attacker, and if you go in with good defense, he has access to stuff like Scald, Ice Beam, Discharge to do the status effects by use of its moves rather than just a direct status move. So I think this guy's a fun Pokemon to use. I think it's probably a very, very good candidate to get a Mega Evolution. I would really like to see Lantern get a Mega Evolution because it realistically, to be usable, needs a stat increase, and I think that would work really, really well if it got a stat increase. Definitely, I think this will become much more used if that happens. So I'd love to see Mega Lantern, but we don't have it right now, and so it's not the best Pokemon, but it's always one that I tend to think about when I'm creating a fun kind of team to battle with. Number 5 on my list is Klinklang, who is Pokemon number 601. It is the Gear Pokemon, and again, sort of like Vanilluxe is from the same generation. I've never had a problem with Pokemon based on things. I think this design is really, really cool. The whole evolution line for this guy of just going from like the one gear to the double gear to this kind of crazy kind of gears that are like kind of perpendicular to each other and so on. I think it's a fun Pokemon. It fits the Steel type perfectly. It's just a standard Steel type. Abilities are Plus, Minus, and Clear Body. Plus and Minus are only really there for double battling. They like increase, I think it's special attack, which kind of in a way doesn't really help this guy like all that much. In that he is more of a physical attacker, so he's kind of more there if you want to use Plus or Minus to be the, I suppose, booster to the Plus Minus kind of combo, in that he also has that Magnetic Flux move that increases stats on Pokemon who have Plus or Minus, so that's something. Clear Body is probably what you go for. It stops stats going up and down, so that's good for a somewhat defensive Pokemon. But like I said, the stats are actually fairly good. Good 100 attack is solid, 115 physical defense is good, 85 special defense, and it's surprisingly fast as well. 90 speed is actually very good. But why this guy's actually really interesting to me is sort of its signature combo in a way, which is the status move, the stat boosting move, Shift Gears, which increases speed by 2 stages and attack by 1. That's a lot of stuff going on for just one move. And then its kind of signature move is Gear Grind, which is I think a 2-hit move. It's like 50 base power, hits twice, so it's 100 base power, and then with Stab, it's obviously 150. That's doing a lot of damage eventually, because you can obviously do that multiple times and eventually get up to like plus 6 speed, plus 3 attack, and you're really going places there. And it's a very simple Pokemon in that way, in that I think that's pretty much the only real direction to go in, is into that combo. but I loved using that so much in Generation 5. Again, kind of like Galvantula, I think I used this in Black and White and Black and White 2. That's how much I did like this guy. Again, like, he is so kind of focused just on that combo. It's like, what else do you kind of put on him? But like, he's got access to some other stuff. But I think that combo, the whole gear theming of him, that's why it's one of my favorite Pokemon. That's why it's in the top 5. Number 4 on my list is Starmie, Pokemon number 121. It's the mysterious Pokemon. Abilities are Illuminate, Natural Cure, and Analytic. Water Psychic type is, I suppose, its main kind of gimmick. And then it's like the original, it's the quintessential sweeper. Good special attack in Starmie's case, good speed. You emphasize both of those things when you build it. And it's got access to a lot of really good moves. So obviously Water Psychic type, so immediately you can go for Surf, or you can go for Hydro Pump for its Water Stab move. It does have access to Psychic. It also kind of, in a way, kind of almost randomly, but in a cool way as well, has access to Thunderbolt as well. It has Ice Beam. It has access to Rapid Spin if you need that to get rid of Stealth Rocks. That's something I didn't say about Shuckle earlier on as well. Shuckle has access to Stealth Rocks if you wanted to. That's good competitively. Rapid Spin, obviously, to get it away. Illuminate, obviously, is a pretty useless ability in battle. Natural Cure is good. I think that's more of a good ability, I suppose, for if you're using this kind of in-game, in that it's going to cure its status conditions when you switch out or when you finish a battle. Analytic is more of the kind of competitive battling ability that you actually want. It's an interesting ability in that it boosts the power of your move by 30% if you are going second. So it's interesting. It's kind of weird in that it's on a fast Pokemon, but the idea is that if someone uses a priority move against you, so like Scizor Bullet Punch, you hit even harder. You're already leaning into special attack. You've got access to a lot of different types. You hit even harder for those situations. And then if you are outsped, because there are a bunch of Pokemon that are quicker than Starmie, even if you lean really heavily towards the speed, you get the boost of Analytic as well. So, it's interesting. I suppose it depends. You could definitely go for Natural Cure or Analytic, but to me, I always remember this Pokemon primarily for just access to a huge spread of typing to cover every ground. Some status, / field move removal with the whole Rapid Spin, great typing, and I actually really like the visual design of it. Of just ultimately, it's just two star U's kind of attached to each other, but I like the way the gem kind of is even fancier this time out. And then, especially like in the anime, when you get to see it kind of move and stuff like that, the fact that the two parts basically spin kind of separately. It's such a unique Pokemon because it is just this kind of it's so like not natural in a way, and it's just weird to see it moving and it having a sort of organic aspect to it when it otherwise looks so kind of mechanical almost. So it's a very, very fun Pokemon. I think it still to me remains one of the most kind of unique looking ones, both Staryu and Starmie. I would have loved to see a Mega Starmie, but we'll see if that ever happens. It might make it a bit too powerful because it's already like fairly reasonably used. I think it's not as good as it used to be just because some of the new Pokemon that have come in, but it'll always be a very good sweeper as a Pokemon, so that's good. My top 3 are sort of on a whole separate kind of tier in a way to the rest of them. I really, really like my top 3 Pokemon. I don't think there's really ever been much change in this because obviously they're all from fairly early generations. But number 3, Porygon 2, number 233. It's the virtual Pokemon. Abilities are Trace, Download, and Analytic. Base stats, I have 2 of them here, and I'll explain that in a second. So it's normal base stats, and this is the only not fully evolved Pokemon on the list. And it's not fully evolved stats, as you can see here. 85 health, 80 attack, 90 defense, 105 special attack, 95 special defense, 60 speed. Speed is the only thing that doesn't really stack up, and even as the lower stat, like 60 isn't like insanely low, That's really, really good. I think it's over 500 for a not fully evolved Pokemon. Now you may be asking me, like, oh, why, when you said earlier on that you only really, think about fully evolved Pokemon for this, why is this not Porygon Z or Z? Well, the reason for that is that Porygon Z is very much a more specialized type of Pokemon. Porygon Z is a special attacker, really good speed, really good special attack, and that's what you do with it. Porygon 2 is a tank, and what you do with him, because he's not fully evolved, but has a very good stat total, the item Eviolite, or Eviolite, or however you say it, is perfect for him. What Eviolite does is that if put on a not fully evolved Pokemon, it increases both defense and special defense by 50%, so 1.5 multiplier. And so what that does to Porygon 2's stats is that you can see there, the 90 defense goes up to 135, and then the 95 special defense goes up to 143. And all of a sudden, that is excellent now, all of a sudden, in that it's got very good defenses, not Shuckle level defenses, but very good defenses, but still capable of attacking. So obviously he's more of a special attacker in terms of if you look at his moveset. So you lean into health, I suppose, primarily with the EVs, a little bit into your defenses, but also a little bit into special attack. And all of a sudden you've got a very, very good tank here. He's able to take hits but also deliver damage as well. In that he's got like Tri-Attack as a stab move for the normal type. He's got Discharge to kind of paralyze but also do some damage. Thunder Wave, you could use Toxic with this guy as well. Has Recover as well, which you probably do want to put on it, because usually, like, if he had just the Eviolite stats, but you could also put an item on him, you'd probably put like Leftovers or something on. So, having access to Recover is very good. And just in general, I think it works like super well in that way. It's also got Ice Beam as well. That's good kind of a type coverage, always very good. Thunderbolt if you have to. It's got a very unique moveset and kind of position, and it's to the point where I rarely make a competitive team to do any sort of battling without this guy on it. He often is just the first Pokemon I've just put in, and then I kind of build the rest of the team around the idea that there's a Porygon 2 in there. That's how much I like this, in terms of, I probably put this in my team more so than my number 1 or 2. But that's just because of its, I think, great usability in general. And then the design. I really like the design for Porygon 2, that it changes from being this very kind of polygonal Porygon 1 to being this kind of smooth, that's all it is. It's just smoothed out Porygon. Porygon Z gets a bit crazy. It's still sort of smooth, but it's kind of got a lot more going on. I just like the simplicity of kind of Porygon 2 a lot. So design-wise, I think it's very cool as well. That Pokemon that looks like that is actually very good in terms of the stats that it has. Number 2 on my list is Blastoise. So this is Pokemon number 9. It's the Shellfish Pokemon. It's got 3 abilities, Torrent, Rain Dish, and then Mega Launcher is the ability that it has when it Mega Evolves into Mega Blastoise. And I do like, Mega Blastoise is definitely one of my favorite Mega designs. I think it just fits perfectly the sort of canon aspect that comes in when Wartortle evolves into Blastoise, and they just double down on that, or triple down on that, for Mega Blastoise, with the cannons in his hands, and how that links into the ability of Mega Launcher, and increasing the effect of kind of pulse and kind of launch type moves. And you can actually have a full set of moves that are affected by Mega Launcher. I think it increases the effectiveness, is it? Or what's the exact wording on this ability? It's boosts the strength of aura and pulse moves by a Pokemon with this ability. Damage dealing moves are boosted in power by 50%. And obviously Blastoise has access to Aura Sphere, Dark Pulse, Dragon Pulse, and Water Pulse. So Water Pulse is obviously going to be the main one that you use, but there's also some good type coverage in there as well. And he also has access to other stuff like, obviously, the standard Hydro Pump, Ice Beam as well. And then interestingly also Rapid Spin. So very kind of good, kind of bulky but also good offensively as well. Rapid Spinner, sort of like Starmie, but obviously much more down the tank road of things. Rain Dish is a good ability as well, in that Rain Dish, what it does is in rain, you gain back health at the end of every turn. So you have to have something that can actually cause that to happen, whether that by putting Rain Dance on Blastoise or having someone else to bring that in. The base stats obviously very good because it is a starter type Pokemon, so it obviously starts off on a good level, and then the Mega brings it up to an even better, even higher level. So, across the board you can see very, very good in that it actually, if you look at like Porygon 2, which we just did, it's very on par with that in that nothing's bad. But it just kind of stands out as being kind of very middle of the road across the board. So 79, 83, 100, 85, 105, 78. It's definitely more on the defensive side of things, but it still has the ability to attack, and that's what makes it a very good starter Pokemon. When it Mega Evolves, you can see the attack goes up, the defense goes up, the special attack goes up by a lot, and the special defense goes up. So it gets a good stat increase across the board, and you're getting an ability that increases the power of your kind of pulse type moves, which by default are good but not amazing. So the Mega Launcher does bring them up to being kind of like very good tier moves. So yeah, I think it's a very usable Pokemon, that it's not just kind of one thing. It can go down the offensive road, it can be very defensive, and you could also do like a toxic and status type stuff on it as well. Or you can go down the Mega Launcher road, but also there's Rapid Spin available to it as well. So I love the design of this guy. The cannons on the standard version, and then the Mega Evolution, I think works perfectly. There must have been, when they were designing this thing, like, is it okay if we put cannons, if we basically make its arms like normal Blastoises? Yeah, and it works perfectly, and it makes complete sense. So always really, really, really big fan of Mega Blastoise. So my number one, my favorite Pokemon is Heracross. Number 214 is the single horn Pokemon. It has 4 different abilities: Swarm, Guts, Moxie, and then Skill Link when it Mega Evolves into Mega Heracross. It's a bug fighting type, and its stats are very interesting here. So again, very solid across the board, with special attack being the only weak thing, and that makes complete sense because it's a physical attacker. So the 125 attack is big. It's got okay speed in 85, but it's also fairly bulky with the 95 special defense and the 75 standard defense and good HP. So it can be that sort of sweeper that can stay in and do the damage that you need to do, because it has access to Mega Horn, which is a really powerful bug move, Close Combat, a very powerful fighting move for both of the types, and then like whatever else you basically want to put on it there. And standard Heracross is a good choice for, like, I suppose, choice Band or choice Scarf. You're probably leaning down the Scarf direction because speed is so important. But you can do a lot of damage with him, and that's where like Moxie kind of would work well if you manage to get that off, because Moxie, anytime you knock out a Pokemon with Heracross, his attack goes up, so that kind of continues it going on. So you do probably a choice Scarf Moxie build with him would be good. But Guts is also interesting as well, in that you do Guts with like a Flame Orb to immediately activate the attack boost from the start, and then you can do that damage. So there's kind of 2 paths to take if you want to go down the Heracross emphasizing the attack road of things. Swarm, of course, is just a kind of very average ability. You don't really use that all that much. The Mega path is very, very interesting because it does completely change what you're trying to do with Heracross. In that the Skill Link ability, what it does is that it means multi-hit moves hit the maximum amount every single time. And Heracross does have access to a lot of multi-hit moves. It gets Arm Thrust, which is a fighting move, Bullet Seed, Fury Attack, Pin Missile, Rock Blast, and I think that's it, yeah. So you can give him 4 moves that are all affected by Skill Link. Obviously, Bullet Seed, Pin Missile, and Rock Blast are the best ones because they have a higher base kind of power. They're 25, whereas Arm Thrust and Fury Attack are only 15 base power. So, you have a strong bug type move, which is good, and obviously hitting 5 times, that means it's doing 125 base power, plus the same type attack bonus, and you're getting pretty close to 200 there, so that's big. And because of the stat increases it gets when it mega evolves, in that 185 physical attack, and then it does get better defense. Its speed goes down a little bit, of course, but at this point you're so far into the kind of bulky attacker path that that's completely where you're going down. So I like to use Heracross as either the standard Heracross or Mega Heracross. I think both paths are just as good as each other. But I've always liked the simplicity of the design, in that it's a single stage Pokemon. It doesn't evolve. The Mega Evolution is obviously a kind of separate thing than the standard evolution. That it's just, you catch this thing and it's a powerful Pokemon immediately. You emphasize its physical attack and some speed, and this thing is going to kind of win you matches. And I think that's what makes it probably, with Porygon, like those two are usually two guys where they'll go straight in my team and the rest of the team will be built around them. And yeah, it's always been this case. I think part of it might be that Ash gets a Heracross in the Pokemon anime, and it's always been one of his most powerful Pokemon. And I think I've liked it because of that. But then just in general, it's a sweeper. It's a physical sweeper, bug fighting type, very cool abilities. And then the Mega Evolution is very interesting in that it doesn't support the standard Heracross playstyle. It more makes its own playstyle for Heracross. So he's my favorite Pokemon. So we'll end the video with just some kind of, I suppose, stat breakdowns of which generations I like which Pokemon from, and typing and stuff like that, and then we'll just end the video. So let's first look at the breakdown by generation from my top 15 list. You can see here, Generation 1, 2 Pokemon. Generation 2, 6 Pokemon. None from Generation 3, 1 from Generation 4, 3 from Generation 5, 1 from Generation 6, and 2 from Generation 7. That's considering Alolan Raichu part of Generation 7 rather than Generation 1, because I specifically specified the Alolan form. I think ultimately Generation 2 having the most makes sense. I think it definitely has most of the designs that I do like. Generation 1, as much as that was where I started playing Pokemon and stuff like that, I don't overly kind of think that it's that amazing of a generation in terms of designs. There's more Pokemon from Generation 1 that I like, but definitely not as many overall as Generation 2 if I extended the list to be longer and so on. Generation 3 I think is one of the weaker design the weaker regions in terms of designs, so there'll probably be one or two that appear somewhere close to the top 20 or 30, but for the most part it's not one of my favorite ones in terms of Pokemon design. Generation 4, I actually like a lot of Pokemon from Generation 4. It just happens that only one made it into the top 15. There is a lot of other Pokemon there that I do actually really like. I would consider 2 and 4 to probably be my favorite overall generations in terms of designs. It's just that not many of them make the list this high up. Again, we're talking about around 800 Pokemon, so we're only talking about 15 of them here, really, so you get that idea. It may seem that I really, really, really like Generation 5 because 3 of my top 15 Pokemon are there, but I think outside of those 3, there really aren't that many other ones from Generation 5 that I like all that much. And even then, I tend to sort of be kind of weird, I think, to most people because of the ones that I do like Vanilluxe and Klinklang especially. I think people like Galvantula okay, but that's the idea here. Generation 6, 1 Pokemon. Again, there's actually a good few from Generation 6 that I like as well. It just happened that only 1 actually made the end list. And then 2 from Generation 7. I don't think it says that much. I think outside of the 2 that I chose, there wouldn't be too many else. Generation 7 I think is okay, but not that amazing. So I'm very interested to see what Generation 8 is actually like. Breakdown by type, I don't think there's too much to read into here other than the fact that Bug is a typing that appeared on 4 of the Pokemon, Steel on 3, Water on 3, Electric on 3. In terms of my overall preference, if I extended out the list a lot, you definitely see Bug and Steel type come up a lot more as well if I extend it out into other Pokemon. Bug and Steel probably would be about even overall if you really extended it out a lot. Water and Electric, while I think I do have some just base water Pokemon in here and so on, they're more of, I think, typings that I tend to either like to include as like a secondary typing on a Pokemon in my team, or just make sure that I have at least one somewhere in the team. Rock Psychic, I don't think it says too much that there's two of them there, in that like Shuckle I definitely consider to be a bug Pokemon who just kind of happens to have rock typing. Lycanroc, I do like him, but like he was obviously towards the end of the list. Psychic again was a secondary typing on I think two of my Pokemon. So Starmie is a water Pokemon who has Psychic typing, and then obviously Alolan Raichu is an electric Pokemon who has Psychic typing. So Psychic pretty much there just for the secondary typing on Pokemon rather than specifically the main thing. So Steel and Bug I think made up a lot of the list in terms of like the main identity of the Pokemon. So that definitely would fit with overall my kind of preference for Pokemon. I do like Bug and Steel a lot. And then yeah, in the comments, let me know what your favorite Pokemon are. You don't have to do the full 15, but you know, a couple of your favorite ones. It would be nice to know what everyone else thinks. But yeah, that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.